Welcome, my name's Doctor Warrick Bishop. I'm a cardiologist, I'm an author and a keynote speaker. I'm CEO of the Healthy Heart Network. I'm all about trying to help people live as well as possible for as long as possible. Heart disease is huge in Australia. Every 20 minutes someone suffers a heart attack. Most of these could probably have been avoided if only we knew what to do. This podcast is all about helping you understand blood pressure, weight, cholesterol for better health. If you enjoy this podcast, I would be honoured for a 5-star review. You can share it with your family and friends. It may well save someone you love. Hi, my name is Dr. Warrick and welcome to my podcast and videocast station. Today I've got, well, I guess a colleague, a friend, not quite a patient with me, but someone who's got a story to tell, and this is such an important story and 100% reflects what I've been really advocating for about the last decade. So please stay tuned. This is super important. I'm speaking with Chris Henry, who's all the way the other side of the world in Ontario, Canada. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Well, I'm happy to say, Warwick, that I am doing very well. Thank you.
Chris will tell you more about that and why he's laughing in just a second. I know Chris because Chris runs or is part of a group that runs a information resource called Art to Aging. Art to Aging. It's based out of Canada, but they get information from right around the world. You can check that out. As part of the resource collection that Chris was doing, he and one of his colleagues reached out to me to be someone to speak for the resources they were putting together, podcasts and so forth. And that was at the end of last year. And as anyone who's listened to my podcasts for any length of time would know, I am deeply passionate about trying to stop people dying prematurely from heart attacks. And that means that I think all of us should literally at a certain age, men probably 45 to 50 years of age, women 55 to 60 years of age, as a rite of passage, have a scan on the heart, a calcium score. Now, during that interview with Chris back last year, I made a very strong advocacy for him to go and get a heart scan and gave him all the reasons why. And what we're going to do is talk about what happened from there. So, over to you, Chris.
Okay, thanks, Warwick. The Art to Aging, we launched that on Substack year and a half ago, really to look at what aging means from different points of view. One, of course, being physical health. And it struck me, I had seen some of your books online and thought you would be an interesting guest, being a preventative cardiologist. In fact, that was the first question I asked you. What is a preventative cardiologist? So what came about in that interview was you making a very strong point. And I remember one phrase that summed it up that you used: imaging, imaging, imaging. And you talked about this thing called calcium score. You talked about CT scans on the heart. And I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. I didn't at that point think about myself, but I did think that it was, good information that you were disseminating. After that interview, which as I indicated was at least a year ago, I began to think maybe I should do that too. Maybe I'll be proactive. Now, I felt great. I thought I was in great shape. I had no sort of typical symptoms of somebody who might have heart issues. And so I reached out to my GP November 2024. And I said to him, Steve, I want to be proactive about this. I want to determine my calcium score. And he said, well, that's great. I really applaud that. He hooked me up with a cardiologist. I went to see that cardiologist. Now, that took a couple of months, public healthcare systems.
Before you
Uh,
get to the cardiologist, Chris, if I can jump
yeah,
in early, this is super important for those who are listening. Your age, if you don't mind me sharing, is
no,
late 60s, early 70s,
73.
73. I already alluded to this concept that I think there should be a rite of passage. Everyone should have a heart scan at 45 to 50 for males, 55 to 60 for females, just regardless.
Mm,
But the points you made are incredibly important. Firstly, there was no urgency about getting the scan, and that's preventative strategies are never like putting out the fire. So if you had a bleeding neck, you'd go straight to the doctor. The fact that
sure.
I've asked you to do something preventative allowed you to just drop gear and idle, and you didn't do much. And this, we see this all the time when the reality is it's such a simple thing. You should just get it done and get it out of the way. The other things that you mentioned is that you felt well. You didn't think you were at risk. You had no reason or driver. And the bit I want people to understand about that is coronary artery disease doesn't care if you're fit or well or look after yourself. Coronary artery disease selects you for reasons that we still don't fully understand. So this is all about well people staying well, not waiting till a problem arises. So please
Yeah.
get that if you're listening to this.
Yeah,
Back,
that's a very good point, Warwick. Very
back
good.
to the
You
back to
know,
the
and
cardiologist.
well, let me just make a point, back up a bit, and talk about how I felt, let's say last November. I mean, I do pull-ups, I do chin-ups, and in the condo building I'm living in the winter when it's, harsh outside, I would walk up flights of stairs, and I'd get the heart pumping away, and like I was fine. I didn't have a heart attack climbing the stairs. I didn't have a heart attack doing the chin-ups or the pull-ups, whatever. So so when I saw the cardiologist, which is probably I think is, let's say, February of this year, 2025, he put me through a few tests in his office, thorough, and then he said, "Okay, I want to set you up for a CT scan because that'll really zero in on any issues that you may have." That was done at a nearby hospital. The CT scan, as it turned out, showed some blockages. He called me the very next day, and after that CT scan, and he said, "Well, it looks like the scanner showed up some blockages." And I said, "Oh, really?" And he said, "I have to say that not every time is a CT scan accurate. Perhaps 40% of the time there is some inaccuracy, kind of like a COVID test, I think." And I said, "Yeah, okay, well, what do you want to do next?" And he said, "I'd like to do an angiogram because that'll really nail it. And that'll show if you have any blockages or not." And I said, "Great, set it up. Let's do it." I was gung ho all the way. The angiogram took about another 4 or 5 weeks to go. So that would put us, I think, in May. And so I went in for the angiogram, which was at Hamilton General Hospital in Hamilton, Ontario. Hamilton General is part of the Hamilton Health Sciences complex and highly regarded hospital, particularly for cardiac issues. So the surgical team that did the angiogram explained to me what was going to happen, how the procedure would be done, etc. And it seemed to be over in no time. So I thought, well, I'm in the clear, obviously. They took one look and said, this guy's golden.
I'll
So,
jump in there momentarily just so people
yep.
understand the difference between an angiogram and an angiogram and talk to CT angiograms. So angiogram, angio means vessel, blood vessel. Gram means picture, like pictogram. So angiogram just means a picture of the blood vessels. We tend to do it in two main ways in cardiology. We can use a CT scanner to get pictures or an angiogram. When we think about doing an angiogram using a CT scanner, if we think of the artery, as a particular size, then the pixels on the CT are fairly big in comparison. So the CT angiogram is fantastic for telling us, yes, there's plaque there, or no, there's not plaque there. And if there is plaque there, is it a little bit or a lot or something in between? It's fantastic for that. The invasive angiogram, which is what Chris was talking about, which was a theatre-based procedure, is where they pop a little tube inside the artery. So this is quite invasive. Remember, the CT is done pretty well with your clothes on and a little needle in the arm. But the invasive angiogram is a high resolution X-ray. We pass a tube from the wrist or the leg right up to the arteries of the heart and squirt dye directly into those arteries. The resolution is extremely high, and this allows us to plan and make the best decisions for that individual based on the clearest anatomy. So you had your angiogram. What happened then, Chris?
Well, obviously, when they injected the dye, it didn't go very far. It certainly didn't circulate, throughout my heart. And and so when the procedure was done, I said, "Hey, that was pretty quick." And the doctor said, "Yeah, yeah, you had blockages." I went, "Oh," I was surprised. I was genuinely surprised. And he said, "In fact, you're totally blocked." And I went, "What?" "Yep, you're totally blocked." I said, "Well, what about a stent?" Which would have been the angioplasty version, part two of an angiogram, I guess, if you want to think of it that way. And he said, "No, no way. There's no way." So I said, "Well, what happens now?" And he said, "Well, likely open heart surgery." Oh, so anyway, he hustled away, and then a cardiologist came along, and young guy, and he said, "So you're probably going to need a quadruple bypass." And this was a Monday morning, by the way. He said, "Unfortunately, we're booked up until until Friday. So we're going to send you home." And I've said, "Well, hang on a second. If I'm as blocked up as the surgeon doing the angiogram said I was, do you think it's wise to send me home?" And he sort of went, "Let me go and check with my boss." Away he goes, comes back 6, 7 minutes later, and he says, "Okay, we can admit you today, and we can do surgery on Friday morning." And I said, "Well, okay, if I got to wait, 4 days in the hospital, eating hospital food, so be it." And then he said, "Hang on a second, let me go and check something." And away he goes, he hustles back a couple of minutes later, and he says, "Okay, we admit you today. Your surgery is scheduled for tomorrow afternoon, 1 p.m."
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. I was a mighty
Uh,
lucky puppy, let me tell you. So again, so that's what happened. And the next day, one
so
o'clock,
for those listening, I'm sorry to jump in again, Chris, but this
not
is
at all.
fantastic. Look, for those listening who have not had open heart surgery or a major surgery, this is a really big deal. I've had open heart surgery for non-coronary reasons. I had an abnormal aorta, and I went off for my surgery. And even with all the experience I've had and all the knowledge I've had, it's still a very, very confronting moment. So for yourself, Chris, for anyone who goes through that process, I have incredible empathy. I know I know the foreboding and the fear as you come to the time of your surgery. And I'm also very aware of the discomfort, the pain, and the recovery process. We won't talk too much about that. It's a different story. But
Yeah,
getting your operation the next day was obviously fantastic, and here you are now. Today is really about, well, you recognizing you're a lucky man, and you sent
hmm,
out an email describing your story through Art to Aging, and the title of that email was "I'm a Lucky Man." What I really, really want people to recognize is if we can identify people at high risk, people with plaque in their arteries. We've got amazing therapies to help. Our cholesterol lowering agents, our blood thinning agents like aspirin. We can use stents and we can even use surgery. All those things can prevent a major event. So even though you've had a significant surgical procedure, Chris, you haven't had a heart attack.
No, no, this is no. And
This is the whole objective. You see,
yeah,
we can manage coronary artery disease. We can't manage death. And if you were to have
that's a
had
good
a
point.
heart attack, if you were to have had a heart attack, we know that 1 in 6 people will die there and then. 1 in 6. That's Russian roulette. None of us in our right minds would ever play that.
No.
The other thing is that there's a very good chance that through that episode, that heart attack, you end up with damaged heart muscle, and then your functional capacity for the rest of your life is impacted.
Hmm.
So your journey, even though you ended up with coronary artery bypass grafting, is a shining example of how we can change a future and make an incredible difference when we've got the knowledge.
Yeah. It's funny when you use the proper term coronary artery bypass grafting. It was what they called it in the hospital. Their nickname for that is cabbage. So
Yes. Yeah,
so when the doctor's handing me off to the nurse, he says, "Okay, so he's cabbage."
yeah.
Okay, and I said, "What does that mean?"
Yeah.
A
C,
weird term.
artery A, B, bypass G, grafting cabbage.
Yeah, yeah,
Look,
cabbage. Funny.
is there anything else in terms of that preventative journey? I mean, if you've read my books, you probably know I've written a book on cardiac rehab, so I hope you've had the chance to have a read and take advantage of some of the learning in that. But sticking with your preventative journey, anything else you want to add, say, or wrap up with before we finish it up? Because this is a great story, Chris. And the really nice thing is we know that the alternate universe, with not knowing, could have been a very dark one. We just don't know.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
your
yeah.
current universe, you'll get 10 years minimum out of your grafts, plus you're on therapy, plus you'll be supervised. I can put to you that you've gone from a position of when we first spoke of being one of the people, one of the 1 in 4 people who could have died from coronary artery disease. You're now highly, highly unlikely to die from coronary artery disease. And I just think that's why I get up and do what I do every day, actually.
Well, if I want to make one final point, it would be, for anybody listening, it would be don't assume you're okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. You can look well on the outside,
Hmm.
but that doesn't tell you what your arteries are like. It's like a car. You would not buy a car, a second-hand car, and 73 times around the sun means you're a second-hand car, I'm afraid, Chris.
That's
60
okay
times
with me.
60 times around the sun, I'm a second-hand car too, but you wouldn't buy a second-hand car without lifting up the bonnet and looking at the engine. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, it's a great analogy.
I'm
Great
gonna
analogy,
one,
Mark.
I'm gonna have one last shout out. I'm gonna thank you so much for hooking up with me, Chris, from the other side of the world. And this blows my mind. It's wonderful to be communicating with people the other side of the world and sharing. So I really do appreciate you making the effort to speak with us today.
Well, my pleasure.
I'm going to shout out to anyone listening who has not had a scan or has a loved one, a family, or a friend who they believe needs a scan. We're talking men 45 to 50 years of age, women 55 to 60 years of age and above. In Australia, I've got a website called Virtual Heart Check. Virtual Heart Check, exactly as it's spelled. It's virtualheartcheck.com.au. If you want to organize yourself a heart scan the easiest way possible, jump on that website, put in some of your details, and you can choose to purchase a scan without the need to see a GP or a specialist in any major centre in Australia. This is an Australian first initiative, virtualheartcheck.com.au. It's the same price, but without the need to spend time seeing a GP, paying for the GP, leaving work, and then potentially being referred to a cardiologist to do the same again. It really gets the ball rolling. If you'd gone through and done a process like that, Chris, it would have put up a flag, the results would have gone to you, to your GP, and the ball would have got rolling straight away through that.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
I'm going to wrap up. Again, always very grateful for guests who spend a little bit of time and give their time to contribute. For those listening, I'm also really grateful that you're listening. I know that our time is so valuable. So if you're choosing to use your valuable time listening to my content, I don't take that for granted. So thank you for that. I'd love you to check me out on YouTube, share these podcasts or these video casts. I'd love you to do that. If you've got any queries or questions, drop us a note at info@drwarrickbishop.online. Until next time, I hope you live as well as possible, for as long as possible. Take care, and bye for now. Did you know that coronary artery disease kills 1 in 4 people? So most of us are likely to carry some risk or know someone who does. If you're interested in finding out more about how to evaluate that risk, check out www.virtualheartcheck.com.au. It'll give you information about risk and what else can be done to be even more precise.